last panel. I'm personally very excited about this panel. As you see, we have many speakers here, the biggest panel of today. And I introduced myself earlier. I'm Zoe, VP and partner at Phala Network, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions to you guys today. To introduce everyone here shortly, we have Billy here from Developer DAO and Api3. We have Hang, CTO from Phala Network, Kevin, engineer or DevRel engineer from the Graph and Edge and Node, Josh, who is VP of engineering from Lens for the social part or also from another company, and Daniel, who is CMO and co-founder of Zurf. So we want to talk today about DA and developer tooling, a very cool topic. And I would like to introduce or ask the opening question to all of you. What kind of data availability problem do you actually solve, or what kind of challenge do you face while developing your Dapp or your protocol or the SDK that you're offering? I actually would like to start with Kevin, because you have maybe the, not the best answer, but a answer to it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for the intro, and thanks everyone for coming. So I think at the Graph, one of the things that we do try to solve is this concept of really trying to decentralize the data and making that available as much as possible in this decentralized way on the decentralized network. Who here is familiar with the Graph? A little bit. So yeah, basically the concept is, you're indexing decentralized data on a decentralized network. But I think there does come with some challenges there, because it is this kind of open source method where anyone can build a subgraph, which is basically like a way to organize your data on the decentralized network. There is some optimization that needs to happen. So there's a lot of education, teaching developers how to, properly write subgraphs. Subgraphs are usually written in assembly script. And so there's, some best practices. There's also query optimization, for when they're actually querying the data. We utilize GraphQL, which we feel that's a very strong thing because, GraphQL is very optimizable. So people can really fine-tune the data, not only the indexing, but the query as well, the query layer. And then also, from that perspective, because it is a decentralized network, there's a large number of indexers, over 200, sometimes up to 400, depending on how many indexers are up and running. We want to make sure that data is, the best consistent quality, high response time. So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that the data has consistency and availability. But I think, a lot of it's education and, just resiliency on the network.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Josh, from your side, what are you trying to solve for data availability? And before you start, big applause for launching Lens v2, please. A big milestone for you and the team, right? So maybe also want to say, what kind of data availability problem are you solving?
Yeah, so can everyone hear me? Yeah, you can. So obviously social is a very difficult problem to solve. You've got millions and millions of interactions every, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And, with that becomes trying to solve that problem is really, really hard, especially on a blockchain. Blockchains have a certain amount of gas every block, and they have a certain amount of seconds that a block is done. And with that, mathematically, you can only get a certain amount of transactions on chain at that point, right? So when we're thinking about Lens and social, we're trying to think what data needs to be on chain and what data does not need to be physically on the blockchain. It can be on a chain, which is like a Arweave, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really challenging in Lens to try to solve that part. We brought out 6 months ago Momoka, which kind of started to solve, be a piece of this puzzle where we still allow, what's amazing about EVM chains is that you actually have this off-chain private key, which signs stuff to prove who you are, right? And the thing that slows down blockchains is the storage layer. Because again, like I said, you can only have 30 million blocks in 2 seconds. When you've got to store that, you've got to pay a price, but you're always also against other people because it's shared. Now, you pay that price not just because you want your data there. Yes, you want your data there because it's decentralized, but also you unlock contracts can read it, and you unlock all of this other things that are really, really important. But what if you didn't need to unlock all of those things to start off with? What if you took away that part that made it slow and not scalable and put in another storage that was fast and scalable, but you still sign transactions, you still submitted transactions. And the good thing with EVM is that it's a state machine. So block 1, 2, 3, 4, they know my balance, what was on block 1, block 2, block 3. a transaction is signed on a block number, in theory, anyone can simulate if that transaction would have passed at that point of time, which allows built-in proofs, but allows you to scale to 50,000 transactions per second and gives the audience a chance to decide if they want it on-chain or not. But then also, what you guys are working on, you can then bring that data back on-chain if you need to, if you want the trustless spending, if you want the things that Ethereum, like EVM is needed for, right? So we're trying to solve all these things. It's a complicated topic, but we're really trying.
You're trying, very good. Hang, you want to jump in and explain what Josh just mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. So actually the data availability there's some echo. Hello? Yeah. Nice. So actually we want data availability because the scalability problem in the blockchain. And once we use any kinds of data not only available on the blockchain, there's another problem come. Like, you still write smart contract, but those data are not available on the blockchain. So we still need to somehow get those data back in some case. So one example could be like Lens. You may make some posts, and the post can be promoted with some like promotion Dapp. But the problem is, if those data is not available on the blockchain, but only on Momoka or Arwave somewhere else, how can you determine something happen on the blockchain or happen in Lens? So this is the problem. Once you separate the data to the off-chain world, you need to face a new problem. I think this kind of like analogy is, now you have a computer and you have the memory, you have the disk, right? And memory is super fast, disk is super large, but there should be something to bring the data from the disk back to the memory, or save the data from memory to disk. So there are a couple of solutions, and we are offering one of the solutions to that. So yeah, that's my add up.
Cool. Thank you so much. And we want to hear maybe more about like the specific use case in a little bit. Daniel, from your side, because also just so Zurf is actually a Dapp built on Lens, right? And that's why we hear now a different perspective. Maybe not a data ability problem that you solve, but maybe also what you're facing, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, perfect. Well, first, thanks for the invitation, and really beautiful place. As Zoe said, we are a crypto consumer app. So we're not much building infrastructure, but we're consuming it. And for us, as we try to allocate budgets to promote content basically on social media, now on Lens and very soon also in Farcaster, our users really want to know more information about the users that are sharing your content. So to allocate better those budgets. And for that reason, we need to know a lot of information, some really basic from social graphs, like, for example, how many followers a user have in that social graph, or the amount of the quality of the reputation of this user, or maybe some off-chain stuff, like if this user wrote an Uber last week, or the balances of tokens that they have. So we want to have, of course, the most easiest way to consume this data, and also to have it in a trusted and secure way. So we try to consume it directly to our smart contracts to decide which user to reward and which user to not reward. And actually, we're using the Phala contracts to do this. They work as an oracle for us to ask directly from our smart contracts to the Lens API, or very soon to Farcaster API, or any other API that we will want. And that's something that we are trying to solve for our users, because in that way, the promotion, the reach can be like much more effective. So we're basically looking for the easiest way, fastest way to interconnect this data to help our users.
Cool. Thank you for sharing from the different perspective on that side. Would you like to comment on it as well? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
No, otherwise I would jump to another question. Go ahead, Dilly.
Yeah, well, so we at Api3 are trying to solve the Oracle problem as well. price feeds are our primary focus product, and anybody that does DeFi and that can't sleep at night definitely depends on APIs not failing. So it's hard to trust where that source is coming from. So like Api3 is a first-party Oracle system. So it's permissionless. So anybody can run their own Air node and then provide their own price feed. With Api3, we've done like a year of testing of which partners we work with to make sure that the APIs stay as top quality, and we aggregate that data. But theoretically, you can use those price data points directly without Api3, but you'd have to aggregate the data yourself primarily. We also offer another solution of bringing off-chain data on-chain. We just have a different way of doing it as well on there. We can discuss that a little bit later as well.
Now it gets already spicy if you want to.
Spicy, yeah, I'm very spicy, guys, just in case.
Let's go. Yeah. Cool. We get there in a little bit, I would say. Thank you, Billy. Let's jump into, because the topic is also developer tooling, into how we or you guys actually serve developers in the onboarding journey. I think a very important topic, because once the product is launched, once the tech works, how do users, which in infrastructure mainly developers, how can they use our tech? So I would like to hear from you guys also, again, from different perspective. What did you work on currently? And maybe Josh, you want to start again, because you just launched a huge upgrade. What did you work on currently to optimize the developer journey so that people can actually use what you do?
Yeah, so I think in anything in life, abstraction's the most important thing. When we think about the internet provider in our home, your grandma can come round and she can scan a QR code and connect to the internet. Now, what's actually going on that is very complicated stuff, but it's abstracted so much away that it's allowed someone who doesn't have an understanding to use it. And I think if in Web3, that's something that we all need to think about, like how can someone just focus on what they want to build and not worry about everything else that goes with it. With Lens itself, we've always had that ethos in mind. We've always tried to abstract everything away, from the API to the SDK. We want the apps to focus on only things that they need to care about. They shouldn't need to worry about like where all the data is coming from deep down to start off with. They might just want to build a nice little fancy app that does certain things. If you do that and you abstract enough away where they install a certain component, just like right now, if you think about React, if you want a date picker, who's building a date picker? Nobody, because it's abstracted away and you install a date picker. And we should think about social components and any components in the same way. And if you do that, then you build a strong narrative and the developers can just build and get on with what they want to do.
Yeah, I can kind of dive in there too. I can speak to that. Like, we try to make it as easy for developers to come into like the Subgraph Studio by making the CLI very, efficient for, just indexing a smart contract, walking them through a lot of the configuration that is a little bit complex with the Subgraph. We kind of like build that out for them using that CLI, doing things like, contacting Etherscan to figure out the start block of the contract, and, finding out all of the events in the smart contract so that we can automatically build the entities for GraphQL. And so there's a lot of that happens in the CLI. We also try to focus on like developer community tooling. So I'm also a member of the Build Guild, working on Scaffold ETH. And so one of the really important parts to us with that community is we have a direct integration with Scaffold ETH called the Subgraph package, where you can literally build and deploy a subgraph locally on Hardhat with Next.js and orchestrate everything. And again, that's easy, right? We want to make it easy for developers to build on. And so, yeah, we try to tackle like that story. We're also working with Cookbook Dev to have integration with their platform so that people can build subgraphs through there easily, and stuff like that.
Okay, we have to take notes. That's why the graph has so much adoption. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing this. You also mentioned developer community. Billy, I would like to hear your perspective from developer DAO now. I don't know, maybe how you give partners that work with developer DAO feedback on developer onboarding journey, or what's your comment from this perspective?
Yeah, definitely. Just for everybody knows, I'm also the hackathon lead for developer DAO, so I touch so many SDKs that I care to touch. And my general rule of thumb is if I'm 10 minutes in and I'm saying, there's a problem, right? And so I've noticed that for developer DAO and a lot of new developers coming into the space, they are Web2 devs coming into the space very curious about what's happening, and they see the trend, they want to get away from the corporate life. And so, is it a JavaScript, based type system? Is it TypeScript only? And my own struggles, right? So like when I wanted to come into the space, EVM was what really inspired me to learn something. Curve was really the one that was like, wow, I want to build this, not realizing how hard that was. So, it was more about like, what's the approach? And there's a lot of assumptions in docs. Like we assume that you already know how to do this. So we're going to skip that. And then here's this. And so like when you're starting and you're walking across a bridge, I'm missing the first 2 steps. And so what I really focus on is like really making those steps step by step. And I assume that you know nothing, and then take you from there, either from the framework of Hard Hat or Foundry, and then take you to that very, very start. So like when we run a hackathon, you get so much feedback because what you thought was perfect. Oh, we're not going to have any problems and everybody's going to be able to, throw this out here. Then you start getting flooded with all these people like, whoa, I didn't look at it that way, or I didn't realize it that way. So simplicity of just assuming that people know nothing is primarily the number one focus factor of like, if there's a way to do it the wrong way, they're going to do it, right? Unless you show them how to do it. So that's pretty much the primary focus, and keep it simple. When you start adding more and more things, like you get so caught up in the tech that you forget that people don't want that. Like, give me something that I can run on the first try with like 20 lines of code to let me know I'm going in the right path, and then I'm good. Don't throw everything at me at the first try. And I love Scaffold 2, but when I was learning Scaffold 1, it was like trying to learn how to drive a car and then throwing me in a cockpit of a plane. I was like, what? You know what it was. But that's what it was, so overwhelming,
Buckle up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But overall, like simplicity and just the assumptions, right? Just take away the assumptions, assume someone's coming in from scratch and they've never worked with your protocol before. And that's why you don't have a 10-year engineer, write the docs, Yeah.
I would say documentation is one of the hardest things to get right, because if you've got the person who's built it right in the docs, their mind's ticking a lot quicker. And as you said, no, I agree with everything you were saying there, definitely.
Hang, I know you also did a lot of research on or changed the approach how to onboard developers for Fed contracts specifically.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with Bill's idea, like make it as simple as possible. I have heard a lot of developers, their story. Maybe at the beginning, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they mentioned, oh, I'm going to do an on-chain game, or I'm going to do an on-chain some application. But it turns out there's no infrastructure, or all the infrastructure is too hard to use, then they eventually turn to build the infrastructure on their own. So yeah, I think once we have everything more and more simple, more and more developers can really focus on what they want to build, then we can have a lot of new use cases and new developer on board. This will be, I would think this is the driving factor for the next maybe bull run, I don't know. But yeah, specifically for us, at the beginning, we actually are very, very hardcore. We write Rust, and you compile that to WebAssembly. And then once we talk to more developers, most of the developers will struggle when they learn the Rust language because they take like a few weeks or even months. So in the end, we decided to just stick to what the developers are familiar with, like Solidity, and of course, JavaScript. So that's why we have turned all the toolchain back to Solidity plus JavaScript. And we even want to make it more simple, like maybe you don't have experienced any similar project before, like us. So we want to offer a very seamless user journey. You just connect your wallet, click, 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 and then you have something up and running. This is the goal we want to achieve right now. And at the same time, the serious developer also want to build something really like hardcore, because the very simple templates or very simple click way, it doesn't work to serve all the requirements. So we try to use some very nice tooling to make sure you can have everything built locally, tested locally. That will be blazing fast. And then once everything is ready, you can deploy it on the blockchain. And yeah, thanks to scaffolding, it's really a nice thing, helping us a lot to onboard the developers.
Very cool. You mentioned it, Rust, and I know we are at DevConnect, but who of you is a Rust expert here? I know there's some. Yeah, okay. No?
Wow.
not expert, but a Rust. Yeah. More confident here, guys. Okay. Yeah, Daniel, do you want to comment on this as well? Because I think you also got like some perspectives internally.
Well, yeah. Actually, when we started, we were just a monetization protocol on Lens. So it worked as a middleware between the social graph and other apps. And our idea was that every app could integrate our monetization protocol, and they could make fees also with it. So we created documentation for them to connect with our API and with our smart contracts. And we tried our best to solve their questions when they were trying to integrate. So we had a little experience on that, and then we're just using, the Lens documentation is crucial for us. Phala network documentation is really important for us, but also we have got some really good help. Like if we need, or if we are stuck in something that really happens a lot, it's really useful that the developers can just answer your question. Because if you don't, basically everything gets stuck and you get frustrated and your devs start suffering. So we want to minimize that. Yeah, I think in terms of that, that's our perspective.
Cool. So important the documentation, abstracted, like make it easy for the developers to use it, and a lot of support.
Yeah, support is crucial.
Yeah, okay, that's very important. Cool. Next question to Kevin, like more about like the roadmap that you recently announced, like the R&D roadmap from the graph. Everyone that hasn't seen it, look it up online, because it's very interesting. You have, I think, 5 areas, right, that you listed. Maybe you can just go deeper into 2 of them, and I think I have them here. Data availability and developer tooling are 2 areas, or how do they fit into the roadmap? That would be interesting.
Yeah, thank you. If anyone hasn't checked out the roadmap for we call it the new era of the graph, and I think the main thing is that we're trying to kind of extend some of the things that we offer. Some of the cool stuff that we have lined up is large language models, right? Semiotic, which is one of the core developers, is working on creating large language models for smart contracts or for DeFi protocols, where you could kind of interact with that. That's quite interesting. We're also going to be providing SQL endpoints in the future, so that'll be interesting because, like right now, everything is pretty much focused on GraphQL. And then I think another thing for like developer experience, one of the, I guess, caveats with subgraph configurations is we query and extract the data through JSON RPC. And one of the new technologies that we've worked with, or I should say built, the Streaming Fast team has created substreams in Firehose. And this is like a new way to extract data from the blockchain by using flat files. And it makes the data more parallelizable. So there's a lot of interesting things on like how we can get the data out of the blockchain faster, get more information, because like subgraphs pretty much are focused on like events. And if you have access to the ordinals inside of the block, you can do more interesting things like contract creations, transfers, interesting things that you wouldn't normally be able to get just from events. So there's a lot of extendability that's coming into the data models that the graph is going to host, and that will provide just more amounts of data and interesting use cases like data science and other tools that could use us, or Dapps that could use us for new use cases, right? And so I think that's really a cool part of that. And just kind of build the network, right? We want to build more Dapps using the graph and go from there.
Cool, thank you. Billy, how would you, from Api3 maybe, or services that you do through Developer DAO, fit in what Kevin just described? Like, are there any touch points, maybe also something that you think Api3 could be better, or... I'm
going to take this from the Developer DAO. I'm going to do it from the Developer DAO section here. No, it comes down to user experience and getting creative, right? Like, when you it's hard to limit people's creativity because sometimes you'll see something on a hackathon and you see it like 20 times of the same thing over and over and over again. And then you see this one random project from this one random dude that just shows up and just blows your mind with something that just way out of the water that you didn't think of. So it's like, it's you can't constrain that out of the box thinking that I say, I think this is going to be great for DeFi protocols and this LLM is going to do this because you're already expecting it to do this. Where it's those one random dude, maybe he's high on shrooms or something or whatever, and then he comes up with this crazy idea and it just blows our minds, and we experienced that at Chicago, right? Like this one guy that just created this one Dapp out of the blue that did multi-signatures on safes across different chains, and like nobody was asking for it, and he's like, I just did it because I liked it, So it's like those kind of things that are available to us. When you have those other tools, you don't know what people are going to do, and that's the most exciting part. Like you don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to leave a hammer and a wrench out here, and you could build a bench, you could build a house. You never know, but you just made those tools available to you, and then it just made people just blow up. And so that's the most exciting thing. Like these are what you could do, but go crazy is the most exciting part. Yeah.
Okay, maybe a bit more specific, Hang, if you want to comment on it, because we just discussed also a specific use case for the graph and which actually fits into the roadmap. If you want to explain on this.
Yeah, sure. Specifically for the graph, actually recently we're building a very interesting idea. Basically, like if you have used any kind of like XMTP, the messaging tools, one of the biggest problem is spamming, because now in the past. In Web2, you can like register a lot of accounts and spam the users, but then they somehow figure it out. They ask you to have the email address or do some KYC stuff, but then once the messaging app is available on the blockchain, and everything will like just repeat. Like a lot of spam, because now you can easily create hundreds of wallets and send the spammy message to everyone. So this is a very typical problem. So what we can do is like there are a lot of evidence to identify that some accounts on the blockchain is the real user. They are not spammer. There are plenty of things available on the blockchain, like maybe your Uniswap transaction history, or like a lot of the other Dapps. If you have borrowed something on like what was the name? Aave, yeah, and also have you bought some NFT on OpenSea? So all those data will be available on the graph, and it's pretty easy to combine them and write a simple formula and make it available back on the blockchain. So in this way, since the data will be available on the blockchain, any messaging app can read it easily. So there's no like vendor locking. It's just a smart contract on the blockchain. So yeah, basically to summarize it up, a very interesting feature we're building is to building a spam filter or some kinds of trust score, make it available on the blockchain to use.
Cool. Yeah, and the trust score. I think there are a lot of use cases for this. Let's dive a bit more into social again. Josh, to you. Again, who of you actually has or uses Lens already? Has a Lens profile? Okay. You have some more profiles to give out today?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Maybe.
Stay here, guys. Because
I've got my laptop.
Yeah. User adoption, right? So, maybe you can summarize. We talked about V2.
Yeah.
What the upgrade actually? What kind of impact Lens V2 has to the overall social space?
Yeah, no. In Lens V1, we learned a lot. I think when you build a protocol and then you release it, you learn what you did right, and you definitely learn what you did wrong, right? We changed a few things. Well, we changed a lot, but our main features we changed was we brought in something called open actions. Now, you were talking about this before, like social, even more so, people want to innovate and create their own features. And we were being too opinionated in what Lens stands for. Like, we had modules that had to conform to X, Y, and Z. Because, of course, a lot of hacks can happen as well. But if you're creating something that's a public good, you want it to be able to, anyone to be able to build whatever they like. So imagine on Twitter right now, if you can just build a feature and it can work on the UI. Open Actions is built for that. And Open Actions allows you to build something and attach it, and then if you click a button, say you want to pay to read further, you can click that button and you can see it like a hook. It would call a hook, which would be anything that you imagine, and it would execute that open action when you collect, when you act, etc., etc. Now that opens up a load of use cases, things that we can't even imagine can be created, right? And we're really going to this idea of, people should innovate and create whatever they like, and we shouldn't have a strong opinion on what's right or wrong, because people create amazing things, and we should empower it. With open actions, we also opened up follow modules. Follow modules, again, anyone can create their own follow module. You can only follow me if you own a Bored Ape. You can only follow me if you're very rich. Many cases you can do. Again, you create your smart contract, you extend an interface, and you write whatever logic, any logic that you want. We also extended that to reference modules. Reference modules are a way to say, hey, you can only comment, mirror, or quote if you, again, fulfill an access control. Again, allowing you to build every part now of the social, who can comment, who can quote, who can mirror, who can collect, who can act. All these things are integrated in a way that you could have 5 or 6 different modules on there. On top of that, we made open actions on a post be able to have many things. So on V1, you could only have 1 collectible. Now you can say, hey, I want 5 actions. Maybe there's a subscription plan that you can have $25, $100, whatever. You can think with what you want to do there. So we opened all of that up. On top of that, we allowed currencies to be open again. So we just removed allow lists from certain things. Again, people should be able to innovate with their currencies. If you want to pay in NFTs, why can't you? If you want to create a new standard of token, why can't you? Again, using that frame of mind. And then the other features that we built were profiles to profiles follow now. We tried to be very native in crypto, and we said wallets follow, but people didn't get it. Even people in the Web3 space didn't get it, because if you have 10 profiles on one wallet, all of those profiles are following the same thing. So we wanted to make the graph more linked to it, and also like seeing OX00155 as the person who follows you, it doesn't really make too much sense, right? And the final thing I'll go over, but there's loads of other things, is we also created profile managers. So we really want to focus on UX and abstraction, as we talked about before, but we also care about security. We care about that your assets can't be taken off you. What Profile Manager allows you to do is you can have your profile in a ledger, somewhere safe, in a safe, and you can have many burner wallets, we'll call it, that can have permission sets to do stuff on your Lens profile. If you want to have a burner wallet to do certain things, you can, and if it got hacked, well, you still have your profile. You're absolutely fine. You can revoke your permission. If you have a organization like McDonald's and you have 50 marketing people, they can all have access to that without sacrificing the ownership of the core profile. So stuff like that we've really, really focused on, and a lot has changed. We completely changed the data model, which obviously literally everything was rewritten in V1. We had to do it, and it was a pain for a lot of developers, of course, because they had to migrate. But we learned from our data structure. We want speed. We need to make sure our data structure makes sense. And yeah, that's basically the summary of it.
Who is excited about Lens V2 now? Come on, woo! This is definitely a big upgrade. Yeah, Daniel, now, and be very honest if you want. Want to hear from someone that actually experienced this whole upgrade, and you are having a Dapp on top of Lens. How was this for you? What did you had to experience in the back end?
Yeah, I have to say what Josh is saying is really interesting for us, because before the V2, Lens also had the idea that you could create any module that you could imagine, like a module to follow, a module to mirror content, or a module to whatever you want. And actually, we tried to build a module in the beginning, but we were never waitlisted. So instead of waiting for it, we just figured out a way to bypass it and actually build it. Because if Lens is actually an open source protocol and it's meant to be a public good, we thought, hey, we just should just do it, basically. So not waiting for any waitlist or any permission, actually. But now that we have open actions, it's actually going to be permissionless, and we could build or work in whatever we want. And about the migration to V2, it actually just happened when we were about to release our mobile app and the new version of our web app. That is really beautiful, and I hope you all see it in very soon. And Lens V2 came out, and everything broke again. So we had to delay a bit our roadmap. And now the dev team is actually really suffering because they find things that are missing and so much stuff change. Of course, we know that it's for the best. And it's all in thinking that the protocol can grow and the social networking work can grow. But yeah, the devs are suffering, and that's actually okay because for some suffering is not that bad. It gives you strength, you know. It can make you stronger. So
it will be worth it, right?
It will be worth it. We will never surrender. So yeah, for example, we have some really specific questions about the V2. We found out that it's really easy to find in the documentation about fetching data, but nothing about how to receive it. These are the famous fragments, and we weren't able to find them. But I think you know now. So. Besides that, of course, the interactions with the contracts are also changed. So that's a bit more work. But anyone that wants to build an app now on Lens, they just can work with V2, and you won't have the issues that we're having now. So that's good for everyone.
You can become a mentor, right? So maybe for new devs.
Yes.
Josh, do you want to comment on all of this?
Yeah, of course.
Surf devs can help for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So we made everything was a break and change in V2. We tried to give as much time as possible. I mean, most apps managed to migrate. We gave, I think, 7 to 8 weeks in terms of the migrations. We had a fully fledged dev preview for it. But for sure, our documentation suffered a lot because when the engineers are full working on the V2, we did let that go. Now, with the documentation side, we're going to rewrite all of that documentation. But the reason that we got rid of some things on documentation was it was unmaintainable. We now generate automated documents, and we actually abstracted all of the GraphQL into an SDK, so you can call it like you would AWS SDK. So I think after this, we talked already, I can direct your devs to the thing that's going to make their life easier. They're probably going to celebrate. And then, yeah. But yeah, really, really thanks for building, and sorry for the inconvenience of it.
Maybe more detailed comments will be taken off stage. But thank
Offline,
you thank you for sharing these insights. I think it's still interesting. Willy, go ahead.
That was the nicest spice.
Yeah. Definitely. I have some more questions actually, but are there any questions from the audience so far? Anything on what we discussed so far or to the speaker specifically? Not it. Yes, you have one? Yeah, go ahead.
I see a really bright future for both Phala and the graph. Because like pulling data from one blockchain to the other and actually operating that with private state. One of the main problems that I'm seeing is trusting data that's coming from this Api3 node or trusting data that's coming from the side of the graph network. Are you guys working with any kind of solution to actually address that? Trusting the pool data with that from
Yeah, so basically the question was regarding like how trustworthy can the data be coming from the graph? Because obviously there's a chance that an indexer is acting in a way that's not trustworthy.
especially if that's connected to a Phala program that is trustless and is actually running trusted data.
Yeah, especially in that case. Yeah, so one of the things, we have Semiotic Labs, which is one of the core developers. They are working on verifiable queries, which will be kind of like zero-knowledge proofs for data, which is something that hopefully will be coming down soon. I don't have like timelines for that, but it's definitely something that's come up, and it's definitely one of our focuses. And we realized that would definitely be a problem in that situation. For something that's critical data, yeah. Good question.
Yeah, my add to that is there are different kinds level of trust. Yeah, there are different kinds of level of trust. For example, if you can have zero knowledge proof, of course, why not? This is the best one. But what if in the maybe midterm or short term, you still want to have something up and running? It's not super critical, but you just want to use that. Then maybe we can reduce the trust assumption a little bit. So for example, one way to mitigate is to query multiple endpoints, like hosted or decentralized subgraph running in a network should serve from not only one worker, there could be multiple workers. And assume if those workers are not corrupting together, then if we make multiple queries and compare the results, this can give you more confidence. This is also most of the how most of the bridges work in the current in nowadays. Like you just have multiple relayers and they sign some message together. Then it's kind of like a multi-sig, but it works. But of course, in the long term, I think we are going to shift from purely trustless solution like zero knowledge proof. So yeah, I think this is how we can make the data availability and the trustless in a progressive improvement.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, this is something that we already do actually with the graph. So obviously we want data consistency. So part of the gateway does that, right? It's checking to see a weighted average across multiple indexers. Like what kind of response am I getting? Is there variations? And we might score and provide a different response based on that data, right? So yeah, I think if we combine those two things, then it would solve that problem.
Thank you for this great question. Okay, maybe then I will have or ask the final question. Of course, always we zoom out now and ask about the future. So, but also to give some data to this in SocialFi or Web3 Social, we have about 4 million users already at the moment, which I think is pretty in Web3, which is pretty strong. What kind of trends do you see, either in Web3 Social and SocialFi directly, or even for your protocol, your service bringing to SocialFi, in case it's on the roadmap? But Willi, go ahead. Also, from your personal opinion, how are you going to further use it or leverage it?
I mean, again, it comes down to user experience for me.
Except user experience.
Yeah, it's gosh, I'm going to let everybody else go on that because I'm going to think on it because it's a serious question for me.
Yeah, sure.
Me? Okay. So I think one of the just my personal opinion, I think one of the interesting observation is the blockchain used to serve mostly for financial stuff, but now we're moving gradually to have more use cases like Web3 social. And there is also another trending happening right now. Like we have account abstraction to solve the barrier for new users to enter this ecosystem. And also we have a lot of innovation, maybe not in front of everyone, but behind the scenes, the improvements in the SDK, the infrastructure, and also the cross-chain stuff. So I think once the barrier for new users and developers is lowered down, then the blockchain itself can serve not only the high-profile use cases like DeFi, but also the other use cases. Personally, I'm pretty interested in Web3 social and also Web3 gaming. So yeah, not sure how and when it can happen, but I do see a clear trend. We're moving toward this direction.
Yeah, I think the graph is definitely very bullish on Web3 social. I think we're trying to figure out ways to index data. Like, we obviously index IPFS, but we also have this concept of file data sources where you can essentially create a smart contract subgraph, and then you can also go out within that subgraph and grab the data that relates to either IPFS or Arweave. We've done this with Lens as a prototype, where we can actually index and provide a subgraph configuration and an API for socials. So I think that I personally think that Web3 social is going to be a huge part of the next user base that we get into the space. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see all the account abstraction come to fruition. You know, like I don't know if anyone's used Farcaster. Like Farcaster has a really good user experience. Also, like a lot of the Lens apps have really good user experience. So I think if we just keep doing that and building stuff with those kind of concepts in mind, that it's going to be very, very good.
Cool. And maybe Daniel, you have to do some demos later on, showcases of Zurf about the user experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No problem.
But Yash, go ahead.
So we talk about hardcore topics here, like decentralization and stuff like that. But if we want mass adoption, 19% of those people won't care as much about those topics, right? For mass adoption, for me, we need to abstract away so much that you don't even know you're using a blockchain. You're using an application because it's fun, and you inherit the ownership parts with it. Like, imagine if you were playing Call of Duty and all your skins you owned and they're tradable. Like, you like it because you can make money, but you like it because you enjoy it as well. And I think we really, really need to buckle down on that abstraction layer for Web3 social, so your mum or your wife or whatever can onboard and they enjoy the experience, but they're inheriting something which they own. And I think that's what we really got to focus on.
So when is this coming for Lens?
Well,
Okay.
Okay, spicy time.
Let's go.
So, I mean, everybody's saying account abstraction, right? But anybody that actually uses account abstraction, you're kind of stuck in that ecosystem, right? Like if you've used an SDK like Gelato, right? They have their version of SDK for account abstraction, right? So I have a smart contract with some money in there. And then I go over to this other location and I'm now assuming that I can use my email, same email that I've used on this Dapp, over to this Dapp, and I should have $100 of ETH there, but now I don't, because I has another smart contract because I use a different SDK. So there's like a lack of collaboration on there. So now I got to move my money back to my main wallet, to my EOA, to go over here to go fund this wallet. And so, I mean, not you saying user experience, but we're missing this collaboration of like everybody has their own way of doing it. So now I'm stuck in this ecosystem. I feel like I bought an iPhone and I can't leave now, you know? So like I'm stuck, like, because if I want to do something else, like I have to like do a harsh thing, spend gas to get out of it. So I see a future of collaboration and finally deciding on certain standards for account abstraction to make SocialFi a little bit better and be able to like, you know, move across different apps and have a nice user experience. I feel like right now in account abstraction in iPhone level, we're like at the lighter mode. Like, look, it does a lighter and I can do the beer app. I'm that old. But like we are in a place like once things starts to finalize and the tooling gets better, the experience is going to be better, and then people are going to be like, all right, this is the best way to move forward, and we're going to have some winners and losers on that account abstraction technique, and then we're going to get adoption. That's my take. Yeah.
Can I just add on the account abstraction thing, because I've got quite a bit of an opinion on that. So I believe in account abstraction, but if we think about the normal world we live in, right, we all have a savings account that you don't spend in, and it's just an account that's there. And then you have your normal card that you walk around and you spend in. You touch it contactless, you're around, you don't really care, right? Now, I think when we get into the deep conversation of account abstraction, we get very straight away to 100% of it's the most secure, and it is the most secure. But if we think about what an EOA stands for and how much power it already has on cross-chain, like you've got this one address that can work over 50 EVM chains, I would like to start seeing people power that and realize that we live in a world that is kind of that setup now. And if we power that, it means if you do log in to another app and you make it kind of a single sign-on route, your funds are in a smart contract. And when you need some money, you can just put it into that money. And if it's $10, $20, $50, $100, worst case, you lose that. Is it really the end of the world? Have you lost everything? So I really do think they can play a role together rather than this debate of EOAs are terrible and smart contracts the only way. And I think the only way for us to get better user experience is to pair them together and create a world like what we have now with our credit cards and stuff.
Yeah, just to add to that, I talked to a social platform that's kind of early stage the other day, and they had a really quite interesting concept where they're going to kind of like merge multiple social platforms together into one pane of glass, right? And I think we could see that with accounts. Like you could build accounts on whatever, and then kind of link those together in the future. I don't know if that's like some kind of new standard that could be written, or so I think there's room to grow. I think more importantly right now, it's like getting users into the space in whatever way that's possible is kind of important too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Daniel, from your perspective, the infrastructure consumer or Dapp developer. Trends in SocialFi was actually the question.
Yeah.
If you want to close it.
Almost got confused, but I totally agree with the members of the panel. I think social Web3 won't be a success if you have to sign 4 times with your wallet to do anything. But I also totally trust the ecosystem that we're gonna be able to solve that. And for that reason, for me, that's not a preoccupation. That it's gonna be okay. Of course, it has to be fun. It has to be. You have to be able to dive into every social app if you want. That's the idea. That it can be composable and integrable, and you can basically swim between different apps to interact with other stuff. I also think that the legacy social media also had a good run, but more often than later, it's gonna die. It's gonna be like what's the word? But it's gonna be over because it's getting old, and they're not getting what the new users are gonna want to have. Also, in Zurf, we believe something that I think many people also working on Web2 social believes, that Web2 social, it's been all about catching your attention and for exchange. I mean, you're trading your attention and your time for maybe some fun, but that fun can be also exhausting for many people that are like getting stressed for too much time on social media, and they are all about extracting value from the users. And in opposite, Web3 social, it's the opposite. It's about giving value to the user. In fact, you can go further and think that in Web2 social, the default is that every user makes money, because that's the idea. It's Web3, so we have to integrate these finances with social. So we're already seeing many examples of this. Zurf is all about this. And for that reason, I think Web3 social, the future of Web2 social is very bright, and it's going to be huge. So I think that's also one of the reasons that many people, the most innovative people, is working on Web3 social, and it's creating their audiences on Web3 social, because it's going to be a really good opportunity for doing businesses, but also for having fun, for creating new connections, and for really getting more value for all the time that you are spending on it.
Beautiful. I think this was a great summary also, and like conclusion for today, our panel about dev tooling and data availability in Web3 social. Anyone that's not using any application in social, please get it now. Today, you heard these are the coolest people, right? Working in Web3 social. And I think all the speakers are sticking around. If you have more questions on the technical side, please talk with them. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you
Big
very much.
applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.